The PlayStation 2, a console so legendary it had Grand Theft Auto, Final Fantasy, Shadow of the Colossus, Katamari, God of War, and apparently, this. So yes, today we are diving into the chaotic, confusing, and unfairly balanced vehicle experience known as DT Carnage. A game where cars have weapons, drivers have RPG stats, and the AI has the IQ of a toaster that's been left in the rain. Welcome to the Worst Racing Games, the internet series where you guys suggest different racing games that you think are terrible, then I play them, review them, and rank them. So yes, after last week's depressing experience on the Nintendo DS with Turbo Super Stunt Squad, we are now back to PS2 racing games. So strap in, because this is one of those games that sounds like it should be pretty good, like Twisted Metal meets Need for Speed meets Mario Kart, but instead it's more like Twisted Metal meets a mild headache meets a pile of design documents that were printed, shredded, and then glued back together in the wrong order. So have you ever noticed that true car combat games are kinda rare these days? Like actual car combat, not accidentally bumping the guy in 4th place or drifting aggressively near someone. I'm talking missiles, oil slicks, mounted cannons, explosions, the whole shebang. DT Carnage looks at that legacy and says, yeah, let's do that, but worse. The biggest problem with car combat is balancing all the moving parts. You need good weapons, good track design, good handling, and good mission variety, as well as a decent balance. DT Carnage went 0 for 5, a perfect score, if it was aiming to be shit. So let's just go over a little bit of history about DT Carnage. So DT Carnage is actually a follow-up to 2003's DT Racer, also released on the PS2. Both games were developed by Axis Entertainment and were published by Age Tech Incorporated. So DT Carnage also saw a release on the Nintendo Wii and the PSP the following year in early 2009. And whilst we won't be covering those versions today, rest assured, dear viewer, that apparently those versions are no better than the one we are looking at now. Now, before we go any further, if you're a fan of terrible racing games, then why not hit the subscribe button and tap the bell for notifications to stay up to date with the Worst Racing Games series. And if you want to support the channel any further, then please check out my Patreon using the link in the description below. Over on my Patreon you'll get access to cool goodies like early access to videos and your name in the credits of every single upload. So go check it out. Anyway, enough trying to sell the channel to you, let's get back to some DT Carnage. So the main mode here in this game is League Conquest, which sounds quite intense, like you're about to embark on a Fast and Furious conspiracy thriller starring Vin Diesel and a thesaurus. But no, instead you just pick from 5 characters, each supposedly having their own strengths like speed, handling, drifting, but trust me, we'll get to why that doesn't matter at all. Anyway, regardless of which character you picked, your character's father lost a driving duel, ended up hospitalized, and then disappeared mysteriously.
Wow.
Let me just stop you right there. A driving duel. What? What is this, Yu-Gi-Oh with Honda Civics? Your father is like, my life points are low, and then just spun out dramatically. Anyway, so you join the DT Racing League to track down the man who attacked him. If this sounds like a setup for a high-octane revenge plot, no, the story is flatter than a tire that just rolled over a box of nails. The mentor you get in the story tries to teach you how races work, which is adorable because the races, don't actually work. So there are multiple ways to win a standard race. You can finish in first place, simple, classic, clean, but this is DT Carnage, so we can't have nice clean things. Secondly, you could destroy your opponent's cars, which is a way more fun option, in theory. You can shoot them with weapons like missiles, bombs, oil slicks, ramps, yes, ramps, and fences. Yes, in this game you can just drop a ramp or a fence behind you, because nothing says high-stakes professional racing like someone throwing construction equipment on the freeway mid-race. And the AI, well, the AI is dumber than me, about age 5, trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. It forgets where it placed its own traps, so half the race is just the CPU cars repeatedly driving straight into their own mess, like lemmings but with driver's licenses somehow. There's a somewhat decent damage model in this game, so you can, as your third option, smash the opponents into walls. This does work in theory, but it's actually quite hard to pull off because the AIs stick to their racing line quite a lot, like glue. Lastly, another option you have are skills, which you unlock through the RPG progression like skill tree, which we'll get to later. There are special abilities like blinding someone, forcing them to brake, you can open a parachute behind them so they slow down, and you can mess with their vision. Basically the magical wizardry of car bullying. So you know how Mario Kart gives you random items, well DT Carnage tries to do the same thing, with the keyword there being tries. You drive through archways on the track to get items, except you'll get the same item over and over. There are races where sometimes I just had oil slicks whilst I was out in first, for multiple laps, on repeat. Not ideal, really. The archways that you have to drive through to get items are a cool concept in theory, but you have to drive through them so precisely to get the item that in practice, they're actually a bit inconvenient. But anyway, with the items, it's like the game saying, you want variety? Well, that's cute, it's not happening, bud. You'll see runs where the AI gets nothing but ramps, and then drops them everywhere. It's like a highway rest stop exploded. Traps go off randomly, and 9 times out of 10, they end up hitting the AI and not you. Even if you fall right back to last, half the field will probably eliminate themselves just because they decided life was too hard and dropped ramps on each other. It's less racing and more like natural selection. Now let's talk about the growth board. This thing is a giant grid where you unlock literally everything, but oh my god, it's so overwhelming to look at. You want new skills? Growth board. You want new cars? Growth board. You want better character stats? Growth board. You want the game to be good? No, sorry, that square is grayed out. You earn points from races and spend them on the board. So far, sounds kind of okay, but none of it works. I progressed through that board and leveled up the stats of my driver, particularly the max speed and max handling, but he still kind of moved around like he was driving a minivan filled with concrete and sadness, regardless of the car chosen. Each car has its own set of stats, but these stats are affected by the stats of your driver. I just said stats way too many times. Anyway, it's like the developers basically made one car and then just Skittles coated it in different colours and varieties. But the AI always seems to have god tier cars. Always. They're always faster, they're just never smarter. Anyway, the growth board ends up being the world's saddest RPG system. It's like training for a marathon, but all your shoes are wet. I'm sure there could have been a better way to display this board, and also not call it the growth board because it just sounds a bit weird. Now, the game does actually have a cool idea: countering enemy skills. For example, I encountered one enemy that would give me motion sickness, so my screen would go all blurry and wobbly, and to be fair, it almost gave me motion sickness too. But anyway, they have a variety of different skills they'll use on you throughout the game. So if they blind you, you can activate windshield wipers. If they mess with your steering, you've got stability control. If they slow you down, just use a boost. Great on paper, but in practice, the first problem is you don't always have the needed counter skill equipped, because you can only have so many skills equipped at once. The second problem is you don't know which skills the enemies are going to use on you. And then the third problem is that there's basically no warning. They hit you and then the game expects you to somehow react within half a second. Playing defense in this game is basically spam buttons and pray. So your best option is to just tough out the enemy skills and just hope that you don't crash, and then just blow them into oblivion. Now, the game does feature other modes within this league. There are time trials and quick races, and that's kind of it. They're just the same things but shorter. There's also 2-player, but you can't access most of it until you grind through the story mode, because DT Carnage believes in suffering. But there are also 3 minigames. there's bowling, ghost exercising, and a parking garage mode? Huh? Anyway, bowling, you launch your car into giant pins, and honestly, it was the most fun I had across the whole game. 10 out of 10, best part. Secondly, there's ghost exercising mode. You just drive through ghost cars. Weird, but kind of okay, I guess. And then parking garage mode, as far as I can tell, is just you trying to leave this abandoned car park whilst also being chased by ghosts. It's a little bit eerie, to be honest with you, and I'm not quite sure what the point of it was, but it was pure agony to play. So in terms of presentation, graphically, it's fine. The damage modeling is actually pretty good for the PS2. Cars lose parts, burst into flames, explode. It's beautiful chaos. The tracks also look pretty good, to be honest. There are moments where items go off and suddenly everything pops into existence like it's being rendered by a nervous intern, such as the EMP, but overall, it's alright. I mean, this is a 2008 PS2 game, so I don't really know what I was expecting. The soundtrack, on the other hand, was okay for like the first, I don't know, half an hour I was playing, but it's just generic guitar rock, the type of rock music that plays in off-brand cereal commercials, and after like 3 races, it just became pure white noise, and then I ended up turning it off completely. So how did the game hold up in terms of its critical response? Well, to be honest, there wasn't really one, because this was a PS2 game in 2008. The PS3 and Xbox 360 were already well underway. However, those lovely folks over at IGN did review this game on the PS2 and gave it a 5.2 out of 10. Fair enough, I guess. I tried to find some sales figures for the game, but VG charts had absolutely nothing to go off, which would suggest that it definitely did not sell very well. So another thing I like to look at when making these videos is how much the game is currently valued. And as per price charting, the game is currently worth about £6 complete. For just the disc, like £4. Not very much. As far as I can tell, I don't think DT Carnage ever got a release here in Europe, so this is just the American version. But either way, it's worth pennies, so that tells us everything we need to know. So now the time has come to rank DT Carnage on our worst racing games tier list. Now, DT Carnage has some neat ideas, and it was kind of fun in places, I guess for the wrong reasons, but still kind of fun. So for me, this game is going straight into the middle tier, also known as rubbish, alongside the likes of Noble Racing, Supercar Street Challenge, and Super Street the Game, just to name a few. I don't know, this game wasn't good at all, but it certainly was not the worst racing game. DT Carnage could have been cool. I mean, it was a PS2 game mixing RPG mechanics, car combat, racing, explosions, skill trees. It sounds like it has a lot going for it. Instead, we get a repetitive slog where cars all feel the same, the stats don't seem to matter, the AI is totally brain dead, weapons are just random nonsense, story goes basically nowhere, the modes are locked behind grinding, and half your losses are caused by ramps falling from the heavens. It's certainly not the worst PS2 game ever, but it's one of the most frustratingly confusing ones. If you are craving car destruction, there are much better options with the likes of Twisted Metal or Burnout. DT Carnage tries to be everything and ends up being that pile of IKEA parts left over when you finish building the shelf. And so that takes us to the end of our look at DT Carnage, and with it this week's episode of Worst Racing Games. Thank you very much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below what you think of DT Carnage. Have you played it? Are you going to play it now you've seen this video? I'm hoping probably not. And as always, if you have any suggestions to add to the wheel, let me know as well. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe and tap that bell for notifications. A massive shout out to my Patreon subscribers for the continued support, and all I really have left to say is thanks and bye bye.